I want to talk a little bit about the basketball transfer portal, though. So obviously, it's had a few guys going out. The main ones being Deshaun Jackson, who transferred out, and then you lose. He was a Charlotte transfer coming in last year, and then was up and down a little bit this year. But then um, you lose Keyshawn Gilbert and Kurt Jones, both to graduation, and you're left filling a few different spots here as well. So it, basketball recruiting is such a weird thing anymore, just because you can turn over huge portions of your roster at this point. Um, I mean, most teams are overhauling over half their roster every single offseason. So it's wild because teams can change dramatically from one. They can be over half of a different roster within a week span, just with guys leaving and and everybody that's moving right now. So the important part here for Iowa State, so like I said, so you lose Noyes Indecitis, who jumped in the portal as well. He was a guy coming out of high school that a lot of people thought could be a nice, you know, combo guard scoring option. He did not play. He just didn't work out for a number of different reasons. So Noyes Indecitis left, Deshaun Jackson left, as I mentioned. Caden Fish was sitting at the end of the bench, had nothing. He wasn't playing. There was no path forward for him at Iowa State to getting playing time. Demarion Watson is a guy that had been in the program for a long time and just could never really break it through into a regular rotation. At times he would come in and play a really nice 10 minutes, and then we wouldn't see him for like five games or something like that. So really consistent playing time. A nice kid or whatever, does a good job when he's in the game, but you know, understandably going to look for more playing time. The last one there is JT Rock, who came to Iowa State as a 17-year-old actually, and redshirted his first year, like full on redshirted, which is very uncommon in college basketball. And then this past season sat mostly at the end of the bench. I think my guess right now is JT Rock ends up at a mid-major, low major, gets to get some playing time on a team that really needs a guy like him with the size. 7'1" is a pretty good size post player there. So send him off to a G5, and maybe you bring him back after a year or two, playing at South Dakota State or something like that. Be interesting if Iowa State is trying to essentially use him, essentially going to farm him out. They send him down to the minors, send him down to a mid major or something like that, and use that as a farm system, because that's just what college athletics are now. Is guys transfer out of big schools to go get more playing time and prove themselves, then they transfer back up to the Power Five. There isn't any more of guys transferring down and then blowing up and then staying there until the end of their career. That doesn't happen anymore. You know, Guys, the mid majors and low majors, especially in college basketball, where there's so much roster turnover, those are functionally a farm system for the major conferences. Do I like it? I don't know, probably not. But that's just the way it is. And I think that might be the situation here with JT Rock, is that they're going to attempt to use, maybe he doesn't come back. But if he can go to a mid or low major school and prove and just get playing time to improve, and just get minutes under his belt, and really flush out his skill set, he could absolutely come back to Iowa State. I think, because they're always looking for size like that. So Iowa State might be trying to do the whole using the mid majors as the farm system type thing. We'll see. But besides that, if we look at who they're bringing in this year, or this off season, so there's a few different guys here. Talk a little bit about the recruiting class, but then talk about the transfers as well. So the transfer portal, I'll start with them since that's kind of really what we're talking about. They've got 3 guys committed so far. Blake Buchanan is coming from Virginia, 6'11", 215. If you watch a lot of his tape, he's a rebounding defensive. I wouldn't call him a specialist, but that's definitely his dominant skill, I guess, is as a rebounder. I think his floor is Brandon Chatfield. I think he can absolutely come in and be Brant Chatfield. Do you want him to be better than Brant Chatfield? Probably. And I think he can be. he's a pretty athletic. He's pretty athletic and he's fairly quick for his size, which I think I think helps a lot. I think he's athletic enough to be able to help defend pick and rolls and things like that, which is what Iowa State really struggled defending last year. He's interesting. I don't know exactly what he looks like, but I think he's at minimum. I think he can be a Brent Chatfield where he can come in, play 15 minutes, give you 4 fouls and 5 rebounds or something like that. I think that's a great outcome for Iowa State if you can at least at minimum replace Chatfield, or if you can get a little bit more offensive production, that would be great. I think the big guy out of this class, I think that has the chance to make the biggest impact is probably Mason Williams, transfer from Eastern Washington. He's a 6'5", he's 6'5", and he's a combo guard. I think they've got that pegged correctly as far as his position goes. He is a solid 3-point shooter. I wouldn't call it, his high school thing coming out is he's an outstanding 3-point shooter. I think he's a fine shooter at the collegiate level. I think if you can get 35% out of him, I think that's a great number. If you watch a lot of his tape, he's a very downhill driver. So if he catches on the wing, he's going to try to drive downhill. And it's hard not to see a lot of similarities in the way he attacks the basket. It's hard not to see a lot of similarities between him and DeAndre Kane. Cyclone fans will obviously remember who DeAndre Kane is. Any real college basketball junkies would definitely remember who he is from about a decade ago at Iowa State. Was on a really, really fantastic Iowa State basketball team with Monte Morris and George Niang and Melvin Ejim and Dustin Hogue, and a team that was arguably one DeAndre Kane or one George Niang broken foot away from potentially going to a Final Four or beyond. He was a reliable defender that was a physical attacker of the hoop, and I think that's how they would like Mason Williams to fit into Iowa State's scheme, is as a slasher, much in the same mold as Keyshawn Gilbert, but with better size. And I think he's more athletic than Keyshawn Gilbert was. We'll see if he can take care of the ball. That was a big bugaboo for Iowa State last year, was limiting turnovers. And if you look at just the overall aggregate stats, Iowa State didn't turn it over like a ton, but it was most noticeable in conference play, and it was just the way the turnovers happened. It wasn't so many, it was some deflected passes because they were just lazily passing around the perimeter. Some of it was there was a lot of just where they got their pocket picked because the handles were too loose, so they were driving into traffic. Lots of that kind of stuff. There was a lot of kind of boneheaded turnovers that happened a lot. So you want to try to find some high IQ guys that can really take care of the basketball. And then obviously at Iowa State, at minimum, the minimum requirement to getting into the program is to be able to defend and rebound. So I think he can do that, well enough as a wing. And I think he provides an interesting slashing option, especially as a combo guard off the wing. I do think he's he's going to be a more reliable 3-point shooter than Keyshawn Gilbert was. So I think, as far as his fit in the offense, I think his ceiling is a little bit higher than Keyshawn's was. But we'll just have to see. He's transferring up from Eastern Washington, which isn't like they're not playing in a particularly difficult conference or anything like that. So we'll see what he looks like. The last name here is Eric Mulder. He's a native of Pella, Iowa. He out of high school was literally not ranked. Played at Purdue Fort Wayne. Obviously, Iowa State sees something in him. I'm not trying to dog him. I'm not going to say he's bad or that he's not good, whatever. I'm not saying any of that. They clearly see something in him. I'm just not sure what that is as far as how they're going to fit. Maybe he's just the guy that comes in. Like I said, maybe he's your junkyard dog that comes in, gives you 8 really hard played minutes throughout a game, where he can come in and spell someone on the wing, or at 6'8", he's probably spelling someone down low, where he can just be a defensive slide in option, in to just eat some fouls for a few minutes, especially like when you're going against like BYU and they're going to have all their bigs in there. Having a guy that can sit there and defend a little bit, grab a few rebounds, and eat some fouls, I think is not invaluable. I'm not saying he can't be more than that, but I think just where I see him on the roster, I think that's probably where he's at. He's going to be a somewhat limited role player. and you just see what you can get out of him. So the last guy I've heard of, I know the kind of the big transfer portal news, if you want to call it that, was their pursuit of South Dakota State's formerly of South Dakota State, Oscar Clough, who is a really, really skilled big man, a very, a good scorer, a good rebounder, not a great defender, but a good rebounder and a good scorer. And they went hard after him, but then Big Man University, Purdue, jumped in and ended up snagging him at the last minute, which is tough, because you thought that was a guy where you wanted one more post scorer and you were hoping he could be it. But in the end, a near 7-footer is gonna have difficulty. They're gonna have you're gonna have difficulty going up against Purdue, who has a good NIL situation, and it's a program with a reputation for doing lots of really good things with really tall players. You kind of just have to take that one on the chin a little bit. If you're Iowa State, you wish you could have got him in names, but you just like with any transfer, you have to just move on and find a guy that can fill that role or do something a little bit different there. Because we've heard that they're going to try to do a little bit more with Josh Jefferson handling the ball, things like that. So they want to try to play some more inside out stuff, with Tamin Lipsey. So that kind of takes me into one more little point I want to make too, is about what we think this rotation looks like. As of right now, are interesting possibilities. So we know Tamin is starting. Tamin Lipsey is absolutely starting. We know Josh Jefferson starting. Right now, I would guess Nate Heisey is starting. I think he's probably earned at least a shot at that. He'll be a heavy, heavy feature in the rotation at minimum. I would be kind of surprised if he doesn't start. You're looking at the freshman class here coming in. That there's Jamarian Bateman. I think he's one of the highest rated recruits in Iowa State history. I think he's like the fifth highest rated recruit in program history. He is an unbelievable shooter. As with shooters coming from high school, it's always a matter of how well does it translate. We'll see, but he's a guy that, like, his scouting report coming out of high school looks not dramatically different from like Matt Thomas. What Matt Thomas looked like, though they really describe him as a good defender too. And from what I understand is that his defense is actually what caught TJ Otzelberger's eye. And then we just also found out that he's a phenomenal shooter. We'll see how that translates, but I think he's a guy that absolutely has a good shot at factoring in as a major part of the rotation next year. And frankly, if I were making a bet on this, I think I would probably slot Jamarian Bateman in as a starter for next season. Xavier Mitchell's another really nice freshman that we'll see. I think he's more of a rotation player to start, and we'll just see how he develops. He's a wing player. He can shoot a little bit, good defender. A couple guys they brought in though from Europe, I think are really, really interesting. You got, I believe it's Dominicus Plata. He's from Germany. He's been playing. He's 6'9", and he's been playing in the German pro leagues. I think this is a really interesting player. It's great size. He's from Europe, so he's going to be fundamentally sound. He can shoot a little bit. He can rebound a little bit. I think this is a really interesting player that's playing against competition that you could argue is better than. I mean, he's definitely playing in anything better than a junior college player or high school player is going to be playing against. So he's cutting his teeth against against solid competition. I think he'll definitely factor into the rotation. That's great size in the post, and if he can defend a little bit, I think that's a really high upside guy there. One of the guys I think the guy, the freshman here that I think is maybe even the most interesting out of these is Killian Toure. He's 6'3", $190 they have a list as a 2. I think he's probably more of just in general a combo guard. Played at Brewster Academy in New Hampshire, which is obviously that's one of the premier prep basketball programs in the country. He can defend. He absolutely can defend. His tape is really nice, actually. I think he's excellent at finishing around the rim. He's very good in transition. I think his perimeter shot needs a little bit of work, and I think like you think he's fine. Like I don't think you're upset with him taking an open three from the top of the key. I don't think you're upset about that at all, and I think he can knock those down. If you can be over 30% his freshman year, I think that's a great number from three. I don't know how many he's going to take or how much, what he factors in, but you know, when you're trying to find scoring options at guard, especially guys that can defend, and the guys that can come in and spell Taman Lipsy and try to keep him fresh and healthy. Killian Toure seems like a great option for that. Um, he's bigger than Taman, obviously, but can do a lot of the same things. He's a great athlete. I think he's going to fit into the rotation, maybe in that second platoon of guards. I think he's a really interesting name to keep an eye on. We'll see. There's some names here for sure. I know that one of the guys that they've got their eye on still that has visited Ames, and I think they believe they've got a good shot at. Um, is his last name is Rhode, RHOD. I believe his first name is Ben. I think. Uh, anyways, Rhode from Virginia. He's a guard. He would be coming in essentially as a 3-and-D shooter. That's what he was at Virginia. His stats at Virginia aren't amazing. They're not going to blow you away, but Virginia's offensive situation is kind of an aberration. Just as far as in terms of pace of play and their volume of shooting and things like that, where you can't really take a lot away from what they're trying to do. Um, but he's a guy I think that if they can land him, that gives you a nice shooter that you can bring off the bench. We'll see. But I think they've done a sufficient enough job in the portal on the assumption that these high school guys, at least one or two of these high school guys is going to work out. Now, because you're not able at Iowa State to land the big transfers, the big, ones that are transferring from, Power 5 schools, because you're not necessarily able to get a lot of those guys, you have to hit in your high school class. Last year they did not. They did not hit in high school at all. No, your sinusitis was a complete bust. And they had a few other young guys. JT Rock hadn't played. A few other guys that just didn't work out at all. And there's no two ways about it. They need to hit on at least a couple of these guys once in a while. I think Jamarian Bateman is absolutely skilled enough to be a hit and a guy that can come in and potentially start right off the bat. But they have to hit on at least a couple guys. And I think if you don't hit on Jamarian Bateman, you're not feeling great about what's going on, and then your ceiling is lowered quite a bit. So lots of time still to go. They still got they've still got a couple of scholarships left, and specifically one that they may bank, they may do something with it. Lots of options here, but an interesting and active transfer portal that I think is almost done for Iowa State.